The fear of God is a man-made tradition. Moreover, one cannot love that which they fear. Some passages seem to say that we can't know the timing of things, such as the date Yahushua will return. Yet Scripture begins and ends by detailing Yahweh's chronology and timeline. If prophetic timing is unknowable, why provide so many clues? I suspect my willingness to date Yahweh's prophetic fulfillments, past, present, and future, will be one of the most contentious aspects of Yada Yahweh. I'm going to tell you exactly when God is going to fulfill His prophecies, because He told us. All I had to do was contemplate the evidence and then connect the data. Speaking of timing, I will quickly dispense with the misconception that Scripture says that the earth is only 6,000 years old, a myth that is held by the majority of Christians. In so doing, I hope to end the debate between science and creation. The first 3 chapters of Yada Yahweh prove that both are correct. The universe is around 15 billion years old, and it took God exactly 6 days to create it. Another point of contention may arise because I am opposed to quoting or commenting on any verse out of context. The practice leads to false assumptions, which in turn lead to errant doctrines. For example, if we want to understand why Yahushua spoke of His upcoming Passover sacrifice in the context of Jonah's 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale, when Scripture says the Messiah was only tormented 2 days and 2 nights, we will find ourselves reviewing the historic context of Yeshua's discussion with the religious leaders that led to the conversation, and then find ourselves on board the ship with Jonah to see what really happened that stormy day. In the process, we will resolve the apparent contradiction, demystifying the reference to the whale, learn a great deal about how God communicates with us, and come to appreciate the Creator's sense of humor. Quoting passages out of context is what led to the doctrines of heaven or hell, to the Trinity, replacement theology, to the impossible notion that the Messiah is completely God and completely man, and to the disputes over the timing and existence of the rapture. While an errant theological position can be supported with isolated scriptures, for a conclusion to be true, no passage should be able to refute it. There are a few more things you need to know at the outset. I am nobody special, at least among men. I am just a regular guy, albeit more passionate and flawed than most. My only qualification for this mission, to expose deception and witness to the truth, was my willingness to engage when He asked. If that is not sufficient for you, if you are more interested in the messenger than in the message, if you are impressed with accomplishments and credentials, find a book written by someone in the religious establishment. Such authors will gladly exchange your money for a confirmation of what you have already been led to believe. These volumes are not religious. I am not going to use the name Jesus Christ just because it is more familiar to you. That would be wrong, because the anointed Messiah's name is Yahushua. His name explains His purpose. Yahu saves. I am not going to replace Yahweh's name any of the 7,000 times He uses it with Lord, just because that's what your Holy Bible says. And speaking of Holy and Bible, I'm not going to refer to Yahweh's Word as the Bible, because that's the name of a Phoenician sun goddess. I will not use holy in front of Spirit, because Yahweh doesn't. He says that His Spirit is set apart and cleansing. We won't use Old and New Testaments, not only because a testament is a will used to dispose of a dead person's property, but because Yahweh chose covenant and renewed covenant. Since it's His Scripture, I think it's reasonable to use His terms. Therefore, you will not find gospel in these pages. Yahweh's actual designation is far superior, and it has no demonic overtones. Likewise, I will only use church and Christian in a derogatory sense. Church, unlike the word it replaced, ecclesia, conveys no spiritual meaning, and the basis of Christian means drugged and whitewashed in Greek. In these pages you'll find Christmas and Easter condemned as pagan, and tabernacles and firstfruits praised as prophetic. You will not find the doctrine of the Trinity, suggesting that God has three personalities, existing in three distinct persons, because such notions conflict with Yahweh's Word. In this book, the law, or Torah, was not nailed to the cross, because there is no cross in Scripture, and there is no suggestion that the Torah was replaced under grace. Yes, you heard that correctly. There is no scriptural basis whatsoever for the primary symbol of Christendom. The gruesome crucifixes that ghoulishly adorn Catholic cathedrals, and the towering crosses set atop Christian steeples and worn around the necks of the faithful, are a legacy of Babylon's sun god religion. The Messiah's body was indeed crucified on Passover, but just like Passover, his blood was smeared on an upright pillar and on the lintel forming the doorway to salvation. Scripture tells the story of how the upright one stood up for us so that we would be able to stand with him. Yahweh, as you are now discovering, was written to confirm what Yahweh had to say, regardless of how many money-making myths and convenient religious rituals it skewers. In that regard, my commentary exists to encourage you to think more deeply about his message. If I feel inspired after examining an amplified passage up close, I'll share what I was told. Hopefully, my comments will stimulate your thought processes as we travel together through this remarkable voyage of discovery. This resheath beginning, prologue, you are now listening to, was written after I completed the first 1,000 pages of Yahweh. Therefore, I already know much of what you are going to discover. And I know that these revelations are going to affect everyone differently. If you are one of many atheists reading Yahweh, you will soon come to realize that your faith in science and man is misplaced. Secular humanism requires an abandonment of reason. To believe that life is the result of random chance requires a much greater leap of faith than it does to acknowledge the obvious signs of intelligent design. Every attempt man has made toward understanding his existence has led to far more questions than answers. And the attempts man has made to govern his affairs apart from God have resulted in more deaths and destruction than has come from the hands of all of those who have falsely claimed to have governed in the name of God. If you are an agnostic, you are going to be pleasantly surprised. All of the rational reasons you have used to see God as unknowable will vanish. You will discover that the lack of reason and silliness that permeates religion, things that may have kept you from forming a relationship with Yahweh, don't exist in Scripture. The idiocy is man-made, not divinely inspired. According to Yahweh's revelation, Buddhists will achieve the state of nothingness they desire. But one doesn't have to be a Buddhist to have their soul achieve a state in which no pain or suffering exist. Scripture refers to this result as the dissipation of the soul. While Scripture doesn't have much to say about Hinduism, it is replete with countless insights into the nature of the spirit who benefits from pagan doctrines, which advance the false notion of reincarnation and which obliterate choice and oppress through the establishment of restrictive caste systems. As for Muslims, Yahweh has a great deal to say about you, and it's all bad. Everything you have been led to believe is the inverse of the truth. Allah is Satan, not God. Mohammed was a perverted pirate, not a prophet. Well, I doubt many of you will be capable of abandoning the religion that is so good at being bad. For those of you who can, you will find truth and God in these words. If you are a religious Christian, especially if you are Orthodox or Catholic, you will be horrified, even angered, for having been purposefully and knowingly deceived. But then, whether you accept